Welcome to the show that takes up no more than 5 minutes of your time, but could help you gain massive real estate knowledge. It's 5 Minutes in Real Estate with best-selling author Shane Willis.
Hello, it's Shane Willis, Pensacola real estate expert, bringing you today's episode. Happy Thursday. Hope you dodged that torrential downpour that happened up in northwest Escambia County. Well, I shouldn't say northwest. I don't even go all the way up there. Up towards Cantonment. About 2 o'clock yesterday, I decided, hey, you know what? I didn't get a workout in yesterday morning, so let me get a quick run in. And I put about 2 miles on the shoe, just a quick run. I was not back in my house 60 seconds, and the sky just opened. I mean, 5 minutes later, there was literally a river coming down the street. It's just crazy, which I don't mind a little rain, even if I'm running. But boy, I would have been pissed if that thing would have opened and I was a mile away from home, because that was like could barely see type stuff. So hopefully you dodged that out. I don't think there was a whole lot of damage. It's just normal thunderstorms. But boy, it opened up a lot. It's kind of funny. It actually worked for my pool's favor. It filled the pool a little bit. I put some salt in it from earlier, and the generator's generating all kinds of stuff. So that was interesting. That's not what you come to this podcast to listen to. You came to talk about real estate. And if you remember yesterday, I was going to talk about the affordability today. Because yesterday I was saying why interest rates were not bothering us as much. That it was more a lack of inventory that was bothering us not as much. And I alluded to today's episode, which is the affordability index. So people are saying all the time, and I hear this on the talking heads all the time, that there's an affordability crisis when it comes to real estate. It's just not as affordable anymore. Maybe that's why we're seeing a lack of, first-time home buyers buying. It's an affordability index, and that just is completely and totally wrong. What they're confusing is prices with affordability. There's more to it when you start to calculate affordability than just the purchase price of the property. So there was a First American came out with that report. I linked one yesterday that came out. Well, this is a different report, and it says it's the Real House Price Index. This actually shows us the house buying power and why, listen to me, why house buying power is near a historic level. And guess what? It's not high. The index is based on 3 components. It's the median household income. What's our income? Mortgage interest rates do play a factor, and home prices, which do play a factor. Okay? There's a couple of areas around the country that this affordability is much, much higher. You start getting to the Bay Area or Silicon Valley or something like that, then yeah, it's just ridiculous. I've seen some people that bought my style house. I mean, if you had my style house in Silicon Valley, it would be probably a couple $1 million. Here, it's about $350. I have just a regular house, $340, $350, somewhere around in there. But they're a couple $1 million. So there's going to be some pockets that are going to mess with these statistics a little bit. But overall, especially since this is, this podcast kind of concentrates on Northwest Florida, these are the numbers that you need to pay attention to. So combining those 3 crucial pieces of information, basically the report says the actual home buying power that consumers have takes us all the way back to 91. When you look at the interest rates where they are, and that's what's really key. And when I say that rates didn't matter on the buying demand yesterday, it does play a factor in affordability. Yes, our prices have gone up. Here in Escambia County, believe it or not, we're actually seeing increase in wages. Not to the point that I would like to see, and it's definitely not to the point where, Central Florida is, or South Florida. But we are starting to see a little bit of increased wages, especially with some of the big employers, Navy Federal, etc. And it looks like we may get a couple of new stuff coming in as well. We're starting to see household median income in our area rise ever so slightly. Well, that plays a factor on affordability. Interest rates are still historically low, extremely low. Now, if this is the first podcast you've heard from me, You know that I know I always get, when I say that 4.5% is extremely low and historically low, I always get this email going, well, 3 years ago I was in mid threes, or so why do you say it's still low? Well, because you're spoiled. Basically, if you look at history, even back in the boom when I owned a mortgage company, most of my rates were in the 6s. Some were even in the 7s, depending on how alt-A I had to go with you. Depending on what, if I was having to do a very alternate bank paper, then yeah, you were paying the 7s or 8s. Right now, 4.5, man, that's just, they're almost still giving away. Now, is it the low 3s that we did see? No. Who cares? That's why I say you're spoiled. You're spoiled because you're still used to that, and that's not it. But that affordability, that at 4.5, which is still historically low, really plays a huge factor in the affordability index. We're going to have to see at least a point higher. That was yesterday's point on the interest rates being demand or holding back demand. It's not. Demand's even higher. There's an inventory supply problem. But as far as interest rates are concerned for mortgages, we're going to have to see a whole nother point before that even comes into play. So until we get to 5.5, maybe even 6, I think a couple podcasts ago, we talked about it because the National Association of Realtors came out and said that 6 was really the mental point. Once we get to 6, that changes the affordability so much. But historical lows are what's showing us that house affordability is still at historic trade level lows. All right, it is more affordable now, for the most part, to buy a home than it is to rent, especially considering rents continue to rise. I am a landlord. I do know that rents are continuing to rise, and one of the reasons I know that's because I'm raising them. If you listened yesterday, you know that one of my tenants just moved out, been there for 5 years. Now that particular tenant, after the first year of paying me, asked me if she could put me on auto pay. She said the only thing about putting you on auto pay is you won't get your rent on the 1st. She had paid me on the 1st every month for a year, and we had one service call the whole time. So I agreed. That I would give her a couple of days leeway if she put me on auto pay. Well, she gets put me on auto pay for the last 4 years. Well, guess what I have not done? Raised rents. I haven't raised rents in the last 4 years because, heck, I'm on auto pay. And there was hardly ever any service calls in that. So if you don't have any service calls and you're on auto pay, why in the world would you raise rents? But guess what I'm going to do now? Oh yeah, rents are rising. But my point on that whole story was, even with me not raising rents and her having rents from 5 years ago, she still, as she went to go buy her house, and it was her first home, her mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is less than what she was paying me in rent. And she has her own place. It's a small starter home. That's exactly the way this is supposed to work. Now me, I'm, recarpeting the place, repainting the place, and I'm going to absolutely raise the rent, because I think we were at $800 a month or something. When I looked at the actual rental market, I should have been charging $1,050. So I'll probably either charge $1,050 or $995, and won't have any trouble getting it rented. 0. But that means that home affordability, for her, it still was more affordable to buy a home than it was to rent. So prices are not the only aspect when you start looking at home affordability. All right, that's all I got for you today. As always, if you hadn't got over to get subscribed, to get the tips, the tricks, the graphs, the infographics, all that stuff, all that fun stuff, get over to 5minutesinrealestate.com. That's 5minutesinrealestate.com. Also, go over to your player of choice and subscribe to the podcast so that you get notified when we do a new one every day. We normally do one 5 days a week. And every once in a blue moon, if I get a good article on Wall Street Journal's weekend edition or something like that, or has something that catches my eye, I'll do a special one. But usually 5 days a week I'm doing them. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast for your player of choice. And finally, as always, I never ask for any money of this. I do hope that I bring you some value, and if I have brought you any value on this or any other episode, I always ask that you share it on social media. Have a great Thursday.